Hi, I'm Joetta. I'm your instructor for FastTrack. Today we're going to talk about Component 1, which is your Assessment Center test, and it's pretty much like any Assessment Center test that you've taken. Traditional study resources should help with the selected response items, except for the constructed responses, and I'd say the constructed responses are something that we'll need to talk about in a few minutes. Let's start with Activity 1.1. First of all, you need to know what are the big initiatives and changes that have recently been occurring in your content area. So Activity 1.1 asks you to do some brainstorming about changes and initiatives in your content. So go ahead and take 10 to 15 minutes, pause the video, and we'll see you then. Welcome back. If you've had any professional development in your content area, you probably had some ideas about what to write. If you didn't, these would be opportunities for you to research current initiatives in your field. And this is also something you can discuss with colleagues in your content area. So researching any kind of initiatives or changes that are current in your content area would be one possibility for studying for the Assessment Center. Secondly, you need to know your standards, especially the standards that you're going to be assessed on in this component. Give yourself plenty of time to complete Activity 1.2. Activity 1.2 asks you to deconstruct the standards of your content area. When you look at the instructions that you downloaded or printed from the MBPTS, what you'll see is that there are standards associated with Assessment Center Component 1. You'll need to look those standards up and you'll need to read them several times. This is one of the best ways to study for your Assessment Center test. Here's an example taken from the MBPTS Middle Childhood Generalist Instructions. If I had seen the words celebrating successes a lot in these standards, I would have underlined them as possible buzzwords. In addition, I might annotate in the margins about lessons I've taught that meet these kinds of criteria. Finally, I might circle ideas that I think need to be researched. For Part 2, in Activity 1.2, we're asking you to go through and highlight and circle buzzwords. And these buzzwords are words that you're seeing over and over again, and you may or may not know what they are. So go ahead and look them up if you don't know what they are. And even if you think you know what they are, it wouldn't hurt you to do some research on those buzzwords. Here are some examples of buzzwords I found when I was reading a teaching blog. As I was reading, the words kept popping up time and time again. When I saw words like text complexity, progress monitoring, differentiated instruction, and grit, I had to ask myself, do I really know what they mean, or do I need to look them up? This careful dissection of your National Board standards is very important to your achievement of National Board certification. Remember that one of the 5 core propositions is not just that you know your content, but also that you know how to teach that content to students. Let's look for the instances and examples that are in the standards that say what accomplished teachers do and what they know in their classroom as they're teaching. Another way to study for your Component 1 test is to look for these things. For instance, or for example, these give real-world ideas of how the content standards are applied in your certification area. Now we're going to talk about Activity 1.3. In Activity 1.3, Now we're asking you to assess your own content area strengths and weaknesses. Welcome back. If you've identified any content area deficiencies, it's time to make a study schedule to deal with those and use some resources such as those listed in tip number 1. Go ahead and start studying now. Activity 1.3 also suggests that you check out Facebook pages and chat groups and other places where they're talking about how to study for your assessment center test. The constructed response questions give you an opportunity to show that you know how to teach your content, not just that you know your content. My best advice for the constructed response questions is for you to think about what really happens in the classroom when you teach this content or content very much like it. Go ahead and discuss how you plan to address misconceptions and what you do when students don't understand. You'll have 30 minutes for each constructed response question. And you'll do better if you've practiced composing your thoughts, writing them down, and revising them within that 30-minute time frame. So activity 1.4 begins with suggestions for test-taking strategies, which includes setting up a Word document and a 30-minute timer and using the practice prompts that are given to you by the MBPTS. After your 30 minutes is up, compare your answer to the Level 4 rubric. It might be helpful to get a friend or colleague in the same content area as you to look at that rubric and decide, how did you do? One great thing about this National Board certification process is that it causes you to have these great conversations with your peers and your colleagues, and it's just part of the growth process that is the National Board. The fourth thing we've tried to do is give you an idea about the constructed response questions and how to prepare for that test using some study skills, study practices, and practicing for the 30-minute time limit. Compare your quiz answers to those in the answer key that's provided. If you have any questions, go to our Facebook page, My National Board for Teachers. Activity 1.1 was journaling about changes and initiatives in your content area. Activity 1.2 was deconstructing the standards that you'll be assessed on. Activity 1.3 was a discussion about your strengths and weaknesses and where you can get the information that you need to become more knowledgeable in your content area. Activity 1.4 was test-taking strategies and discussions with colleagues to deepen your understanding and your perspective and enlarge your perspective. Activity 1.5 is a quiz about some ideas that we've talked about or discussed in this module. So hopefully you did well. And if you didn't do well or you've still got questions, go ahead to our Facebook group page, which is My National Board for Teachers. Look for our other products at mynationalboard.com. If you still have questions, feel free to reach out to us on our Facebook group, My National Board for Teachers, or on our webpage, mynationalboard.com.